She was 34 weeks pregnant when she opened Vincent's laptop and stopped being his wife. It happened at 9:14 on a Wednesday morning. She needed the routing number for their joint account. Her accountant, Dennis, had asked for it twice already, and the checkbook was somewhere in Vincent's home office. She sat at his desk because her ankles were swollen and the chair was the closest seat, and she opened the laptop because it was already unlocked, and she found the email because it was already open. The subject line read, "Sweet confirmation, the Wentworth, November 14. November 14 was a Thursday, 3 weeks ago. Vincent had been in Houston, he said, a terminal expansion deal. He had texted her a photo of a Tex-Mex dinner and said the queso was terrible and that he missed her. The reservation was for 2 nights. The suite was $100 a night. The name on the confirmation was not Vincent Farrell. It was Odette Lane. Lucinda Farrell sat in her husband's office chair, one hand resting on the curve of her stomach, and read the email 3 times. The baby moved, a small interior shift, an elbow or a heel, pressing briefly against the inside of her ribs. She placed her palm flat and held it there. She did not cry, not yet. She was not the kind of woman who cried before she understood what she was crying about. If you have ever sat very still while something large rearranges itself around you, you already know what the next 4 minutes looked like. The room did not change. The morning light came through the plantation shutters the same way it always did. The house was quiet. Down the hall, she could hear the housekeeper running the vacuum in the guest room. Lucinda scrolled up. What she found took 17 minutes to read and another 40 to understand. Odette Lane, 29 years old, listed in Vincent's company directory as Senior Development Associate for Farrell Maritime Holdings. In the thread, she was not a development associate. She was the person Vincent called Habibti in lowercase. She was the person who sent voice memos at midnight. She was the person who wrote 5 months ago when Lucinda was 19 weeks pregnant and showing, does she know yet about any of it? Vincent's answer, she knows what she needs to know. Lucinda read that sentence twice. Then she closed the laptop, stood up slowly, because standing up was slow now, and walked to the kitchen. She poured a glass of water. She drank it at the window looking out at the backyard, at the Japanese maple Vincent had planted the spring after they married, because she had mentioned once that she liked them. She had believed that tree was evidence of something. She finished the water, she rinsed the glass, she put it in the drying rack. Then she picked up her phone and called Greta Nolan. Greta had been Lucinda's roommate at Georgetown for 2 years, then her friend for 11. She was now a financial forensics attorney in Chicago, the kind of attorney who got called when someone needed to understand what had been hidden and where it had gone. She answered on the second ring because Lucinda never called before noon without a reason. "Tell me," Greta said. Lucinda told her. She kept her voice flat because her voice was the one thing she could control right now, and she intended to keep controlling it. Greta was quiet for 6 seconds. Then, "Don't touch the laptop again. Don't access any accounts from a device registered to you. Do you have a tablet or a laptop that isn't on his network?" "My personal laptop, it's on my own hotspot." "Use only that. I need you to tell me everything you have access to. Accounts, documents, anything with your name on it." Lucinda thought. She had been thorough in the way she was thorough about most things, about understanding what she had married into. Not because she had suspected Vincent specifically. She hadn't, not then, but because she had grown up watching her father, Judge Harlan Ward, explain that a woman who did not understand the architecture of her own financial situation was a woman who could be erased from it. She had 2 names on 3 accounts. She had signatory access to the family trust, which Vincent had added her to 18 months ago as a tax strategy. She knew the combination to the safe in the office, not because he had given it to her, but because she had watched his hand the second time he opened it, and she remembered numbers. She had seen, over 3 years of marriage, the names of several shell entities that appeared on documents Vincent left on the kitchen table, careless in the way powerful men are careless when they believe no one around them is paying attention. She told Greta all of it. "Lucinda." Something entered Greta's voice that was not professional. "When's the C-section?" 11 days. A pause. "We have 9 days of window before you need to be resting." 8, Lucinda said. "I want a day of margin." "Okay, 8 days. I'm going to call a woman in Boston, Felicity Oram, Trust and Asset Protection. She's handled situations close enough to this. I need to brief her tonight." "One more thing," Lucinda said. "Vincent's uncle, Reginald Howe, he structured most of the financial architecture. He's been with the family for 30 years. Whatever we do has to account for the fact that he will notice movement before Vincent does. A longer pause. How do you know that? Because Vincent told me himself the night of their company anniversary dinner. He said it like he was proud of it. Lucinda watched a cardinal land on the Japanese maple and leave within 3 seconds. I've been waiting for a reason to find that useful. She worked at the kitchen table after that on her personal laptop, while the afternoon came and went. She was systematic in the way she had always been systematic, a quality that most people in Vincent's world had read as decorative. The composed wife, the former analyst who had given up her midtown career to support his schedule, the woman who asked the right questions at dinner parties and remembered everyone's children's names. No one had asked what she did with the information she collected. Felicity Oram called at 4:30 and spoke for 41 minutes without softening a single word. The trust carries dual authorization, Felicity said. Both names equal weight. Every transfer you make from it is entirely legal. The question is how much you can move before it flags a review. How much room do I have? Below $180,000 per transfer with documentation, you're within normal variance for an account this size. Lucinda did the math while Felicity was still talking. 4 accounts, the trust, 8 days. What I need from you is authorization to open a protected personal account in your maiden name, Ward. Nothing linked to Farrell Maritime, nothing traceable to your shared addresses. I can do that this afternoon. Good, one more thing. Felicity paused deliberately. The documents you mentioned, the shell companies, the port contracts, do you understand what you're looking at? Lucinda thought about what she had seen over 3 years. Invoices with names that didn't match. Shipping manifests referencing cargo volumes inconsistent with declared freight. Payments to entities whose registered addresses were post office boxes in 3 different states. She had not understood all of it, but she had filed it. I understand enough, she said. Then understand this. What you do with that information matters more than the information itself. In the wrong order, it becomes a weapon against you. I know, Lucinda said. My father is a federal judge. I've spent my entire life watching information travel in the wrong direction and destroy the person who sent it. Silence, then Felicity said, all right, we do this precisely. The next 8 days had a surface that looked like nothing. Vincent came home each evening. He was attentive in the particular way he had always been attentive during her pregnancy, asking whether she had eaten, whether she was sleeping, whether the nursery needed anything. He had the quality of a man who was good at the form of things. He had always been good at the form of things. The attentiveness was genuine in its way, just not exclusive. He had never looked at her like a man with something to hide. He looked at her the way he looked at everything he valued, with the calm authority of someone who expected what he owned to remain where he left it. She set the table, she asked about his meetings. She did not open his laptop again. At night, after Vincent fell asleep and he slept quickly and heavily, a man with no trouble resting, Lucinda sat at the kitchen table and worked. Greta was in Chicago, Felicity in Boston. They communicated through a signal thread on a prepaid phone Lucinda had bought at a Walgreens, 3 blocks from her OB's office on a Tuesday afternoon when she had an appointment anyway. On day 2, she transferred $160,000 from the family trust into the Ward account Felicity had established. On day 3, she accessed the safe. She had 9 minutes while Vincent was on a call in the garden. Inside, 2 external hard drives, a ledger she mostly understood, and a folder of signed agreements between Farrell Maritime and 3 entities she now knew were Shell's routing port revenue through a Delaware holding company. She photographed every page, uploaded to an encrypted folder, replaced everything exactly. On day 4, another $140,000. On day 5, Reginald Howe called. She was at the kitchen table eating lunch when his name appeared on her registered phone. She answered because not answering would be stranger. Lucinda? His voice was the same as always, courteous, dry, 72 years of controlled effect. How are you feeling? Fine, Reginald, 36 weeks today. Wonderful, I noticed some activity on the trust account, a couple of transfers. I wanted to make sure everything was in order. Doctors' fees run larger at this stage. She had expected this. She had expected Reginald before Vincent. I'm prepaying the hospital, she said. The private wing requires a deposit before admission. I didn't want to bother Vincent with the details, he worries. A pause. Of course I'll make a note. Take care of yourself. He hung up. She called Greta. Move up the documentation packages. I have maybe 72 hours before Reginald makes a call that changes the temperature. Greta said the packages go out tomorrow. The documentation was precise, which was the point. Lucinda had not assembled it to destroy Vincent. She had assembled it to protect herself, her child and her father, and to make clear to anyone who received it that she had understood the situation and had exited it with full knowledge. Her father received a sealed envelope through Greta's office courier, a summary of the shell company structures connecting Farrell Maritime to the Port Authority contracts, and a note in Lucinda's handwriting. "Dad, you need to recuse yourself from anything that touches these names. Not for him, for you. I'm safe. I love you." Judge Harlan Ward had overseen 2 cases in the past year that had touched, on the periphery, entities connected to those same port contracts. He would understand immediately why he was reading this. A separate package went to a federal prosecutor in Boston. Not filed, not submitted, but delivered with a cover letter from Felicity's office noting that the documents were provided for informational context in the event of any future inquiry. Enough to matter, not enough to explode. A third package went to the Regional Port Authority inspector documenting manifest discrepancies across 11 shipments over 2 years. Lucinda did not call reporters. She did not leak anything. She had chosen specific pressure points and applied exactly enough force. The morning the packages went out, she transferred the last amount from the joint savings account, $132,000 within threshold, and moved the documentation to 3 separate encrypted backups under 3 separate email addresses Greta had created. Then she packed 2 bags. The baby's things, which had been half organized in a hospital bag for 6 weeks, her own clothes, documents in hard copy, birth certificate, passport, financial authorization letters, medical records. She did not take the jewelry Vincent had given her, except her grandmother's bracelet, which had been hers before him. She left the anniversary watch, his choice, an Audemars Piguet, on top of his closed laptop. On the notepad from the kitchen counter she wrote 8 words. "I know about a debt, the baby and I are fine." She placed it beside the watch. She called a car under Greta's name. The destination was a private maternity hospital 22 minutes away, one that accepted patients under a preferred name for privacy, a policy originally designed for celebrities and politicians' families. She had made the reservation 6 days earlier under Lucinda Ward. She had paid the deposit from the Ward account. She left at 7:41 in the morning while Vincent was in the shower. The door closed the way doors close when no one slams them. Vincent found the note at 9:03. He read it standing at the kitchen counter, still holding his coffee. He read it a second time. He set the mug down with the precise care of a man managing his own reaction, and he called Frank Dario, his head of security. Frank had been with the Farrell family for 14 years and had resources that did not appear on any organizational chart. "Track the car services," Vincent said. "Check hospital registration systems. She is 36 weeks pregnant." Frank had a partial answer within 2 hours. The car service record led to Greta Nolan's name, a dead end because Greta Nolan was a licensed attorney and her client communications were protected. The hospital search found nothing under Farrell. He ran Ward and found a private admission at a facility that required a court order to confirm patient registration. Vincent did not have a court order. He called Reginald at 11:30. Reginald listened without interrupting. Then, "How much did she take?" $437,000 from the trust and savings, all within authorization. "That's not theft, Vincent. That's her money." A pause containing a longer conversation. "Tell me about the packages." Vincent did not yet know about the packages. He found out at 12:15, when Marcus Rayleigh called to say the Port Authority inspector had requested documentation for a cargo manifest audit. At 12:40, he received a message from his father-in-law's clerk. Judge Ward was recusing himself from all matters related to Farrell entities. No further explanation. At 1:17, his attorney called about a notation from a federal prosecutor's office in Boston. Vincent sat in his kitchen for 22 minutes. He was a man who had built his position on the assumption that every piece of the board was visible to him. He had looked at Lucinda for 3 years and seen a woman who loved him, which she had, and a woman who was contained within the world he provided, which she had not been. He called Reginald again. "She didn't go to the press," Reginald said. "She didn't file anything. She sent specific documents to specific people who needed them. That is not the behavior of a woman who wants to burn you down." "Then what does she want?" Reginald was quiet. When he spoke, his voice had shifted into something Vincent hadn't heard in years. The version of Reginald that existed before managing the business had made him a strategist first and everything else second. "She wants her child to be safe, and she wants you to know that she knew, and that she was not afraid of what she knew. He paused. That is different from wanting you destroyed. Consider the distinction carefully before you do something you cannot undo. Vincent looked at the notepad on the counter. The baby and I are fine. She had included that. She had written a note that could have said anything, accusations, threats, recriminations, and she had chosen to tell him the baby was fine. He did not send anyone to the hospital. He sat in the kitchen and waited. Outside, the Japanese maple was losing its last leaves in the November wind, one at a time, without hurry. Lucinda gave birth on a Thursday morning, 11 days after she left. The labor was 14 hours and 2 minutes, no complications. At 6:47 in the morning, a girl, 7 pounds 2 ounces, fingers like small brackets holding nothing, reaching for everything. Greta was in the room. She had driven down from Chicago the day before. There was no one else. No one except Lucinda was required. She named the girl Harriet, after her grandmother, and she held her in the pale morning light coming through the hospital window, and understood something she had already known intellectually, but not yet in her body, that the past 3 years had been oriented around a man who measured her usefulness, and that this child would never be measured in that way by her, not once, not for as long as she lived. She pressed her face to Harriet's head and breathed. She allowed herself to cry then for the first time, not for Vincent, and not for Odette, and not for the marriage, but for the version of herself who had stood across from him 3 years ago and believed completely and without qualification that he was seeing her clearly. She cried for 4 minutes. Then she stopped because Harriet was rooting and there was work to do. The settlement negotiation took 11 weeks. Lucinda attended none of the meetings. Greta represented her interests, with Felicity handling the financial structuring. Vincent's attorney was a man named Philip Marsh, who had the manner of someone accustomed to getting what he asked for. He did not get what he asked for. Lucinda's conditions were clear and non-negotiable: full legal and physical custody of Harriet, monthly support indexed to Farrell Maritime's declared revenue, with audit rights exercised by her financial designee every 18 months, a property agreement establishing a separate personal trust for Harriet's education and future assets, beyond Vincent's reach. No non-disclosure agreement. She would not sign one. Her attorney explained, with polite clarity, that the existence of the documentation packages made an NDA somewhat academic. She had no need to speak publicly because she had already spoken precisely. Philip Marsh requested a face-to-face meeting. Lucinda declined through Greta. Philip Marsh requested a phone call. Lucinda answered once for 12 minutes. Vincent did not speak. His attorney spoke. Lucinda listened, asked 3 clarifying questions about the custody schedule, and then said quietly, "We agree to the terms as written. I don't need anything else from him. I need the checks to come on time." The line was silent for a moment. "They will," Vincent said. It was the only thing he said on the call. Lucinda had moved to Savannah by then, a rented house on a street with old live oaks and a neighborhood that didn't know her name. Greta visited once a month. Her father visited twice. The house had a front porch and enough quiet that Harriet slept well. On the evenings when Harriet slept early, Lucinda sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea and watched the oaks move. The Spanish moss shifted in the coastal wind with the patience of things that have been in one place long enough to stop needing to prove it. She thought about what had happened the way she thought about any closed case. Not with regret, not with bitterness, but with the clear-eyed assessment of someone cataloguing what had been learned. She had loved Vincent in the way you love a version of a person assembled from what they allow you to see. That love had been real. It had also been incomplete information. Harriet was 4 months old when the first compliance check came back from Felicity's office. Vincent had sent the support payment on the 1st of the month, 4 days early. He sent a second the following month. He had not contacted Lucinda directly. He had not requested a visit, though the custody arrangement entitled him to supervised ones. She did not know whether that was grief or calculation or something else entirely, and she had stopped spending energy trying to understand Vincent Farrell's interior. One evening, Greta called from Chicago and asked, carefully in the voice she used when a question might be unwelcome, how Lucinda was actually doing. Not logistically, actually. Lucinda looked at Harriet, asleep in the bassinet beside the porch door, her fist resting near her ear in the particular posture of a person who has never had to guard anything. "I'm good," Lucinda said. She meant it in the way you mean something when it has traveled a long way to become true. The oaks moved. The moss shifted. Down the block, someone was mowing a lawn in the early evening, which was a thing people did in Savannah because the seasons were lenient. Harriet breathed, small and even, in and out, as though breathing were the simplest thing in the world. It was, Lucinda thought. When you got everything else right, it was.